Hello, I hope this video finds you well wherever you are during this time of social isolation. One of the things I've committed to do during this time is to record one Codingbat solution a night, and I recorded diff21 tonight. Now it turns out I had actually written the solution a long time ago and I'm just recording it. And I got to the last example and I kind of fumbled over it a little bit because I had forgotten I'd done it. And I remember having a lot of fun doing this solution and actually being really proud of myself because I did it in one line. And the line that works is right here. And if I hit go, you'll see it kind of works. So if you're just diving in, I suggest look at the other video first because really this video assumes you know what this question is asking and you're interested in looking at kind of some fun shortcuts here. All right, now let's talk about trying to do these in one line. It's a lot of fun. But I really do recommend if you're a beginning programmer to first do it using a couple lines of code because sometimes you'll bypass some really good learning that can happen when you break up a problem. Also, if I was working with someone and they gave me this as a solution, I'd be really ticked off because that's really hard to read. So it's not always best to do it in one line of code, but it can be fun. So let's break this down. So I was thinking about what's the best way to explain this to you. And what I've decided to do is I've taken this first part here and I've pasted it, this first part right here, and I've pasted it there. So let's start by understanding what this does. Now you can probably see pretty readily, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that in and I hit go, and you'll see that I get more than half the test cases correct. And the reason why I'm getting more than half the test cases correct is because this is just taking n minus 21, taking the absolute value and returning it. And remember, this question says if n is less than 21, we just return the absolute difference. So that's half the test cases. Where this question really gets interesting is this second half here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to bring it back and I'm going to hit go and you're going to see what it returns. So obviously they're all wrong, but you'll notice what it's returning is the value 1.0 and 2.0. And if you look a little closer, you'll notice that it returns 1.0 whenever n is less than 21, and it returns 2.0 if n is greater than or equal to 21. And so what I do with my solution is I take, in the solution, this first bit just simply calculates the difference, and this line of code figures out whether it's going to be times 1.0 or 2.0 using this fun functions here. Now you might notice that it returns 0.0, so this is a float or a double value. And that's why here I have to cast it to an int before I return. Notice if I remove this int there and I hit go, I get all the answers wrong. The value's right because it's 2, but what I'm returning is 2.0. And so that's why the last thing here is I have this int. So let's take a second, let's break this down, because I think this is where it's really quite interesting. And I want to start off by saying there's a really powerful idea, and I've seen it on the AP exam. I've taught the AP exam for years, and I really like this. It's a nice little quick way to round a number. And so what I can do is I can do this. If I have a number and if I want to round a number up, so in other words, if I have 1.1 and I want this to be 2, so basically, let me rephrase that. It's not about rounding, it's about taking a number and moving it to the ceiling function or the next integer value. Well, I can take 1.1 and add 0.5. And what that's going to do is push it past 1.5, so when I apply that round function, I get 2.0. And so what you'll notice is that as long as my value is above 1.0, I'm always going to round up to 2. If n is, say, 0.95, and I apply this round, I'm going to get 0.95 and add 0.5, which will take me to 1.45, and when I round that, it will take me down to 1. And so this is just a fun little technique that can be useful in certain situations. And we kind of leverage it here. So what do? Well, what we do, let's imagine that n is 22. And what we know then is that we have to do the value times 2. So this should return a value of 2, this line. And let's break that down. So the first thing I do is I take the absolute value of 22, which of course returns 22, And then I take 22 and divide it by 21, and that gives me some decimal. But notice this decimal is greater than 1. And then I add 0.5 to it, and so I then get those two, and I result in 1.5476. And then I take the min of that value in 2, which of course is 1.5476, and I round that, and I get 2.0. So notice that the value of n is greater than 21, this generates 2.0. And we can show the same thing if the value is less than 21. So here, I've done it both with 2 and -2, and they're really similar with the exception of this first step. So we take the absolute value of 2, which of course gives me 2. And then 2 divided by 21 gives me this 0.0952, and I add that 0.5. And you might ask yourself, why do I need to add that 0.5 here? Well, the reason why I have to add that 0.5 is that, remember, I want this result to be 1. And if I don't add 0.5 to this, when I take the minimum of these two values, right here, I'm going to end up at a value in here that's less than 0.5, meaning that when I round it, it will go to 0. So we see that we get round 0.5952, which results in 1.0. And we can see with -2, it's exactly the same. It's just this first line that takes -2 and makes it absolute value. And this is just a fun way to kind of play around with some of these functions and have some fun. I remember a long time ago I had a student and she worked through, I think, the majority of the Codingbat problems in one line. She had done almost all of them, and it was really cool to watch her kind of play around with that logic and figure it out. So again, if you're finding you're working through these and you're finding success, try and one-line some of these. But remember, if you're working with people, just because it's in one line doesn't mean it's any better, because that's a real pain to read. Anyways, have a good day. Take care.